Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Los Angeles Public Library's third program in the Maternal and Family Mental Health series, Racism and Maternal Mental Health. We are here today with three women who are generously sharing their journeys combating racism and how their experiences have propelled them into action. And we very much appreciate their being here today to talk about their experiences and the resources and support available to families here in Los Angeles. Brittany and Jessica Patterson will be sharing their personal stories on navigating the effects of race on their pregnancy and their postpartum period, along with the recommendations and resources. And then Adjoa Jones will discuss local efforts to reverse these devastating statistics. First will be Brittany Patterson. She's a proud mother. First will be Jessica Wade, and she's the founding president and CEO of Mighty Little Giants. She's a certified doula and a lactation education specialist with a bachelor's degree in early childhood administration. Next will be Brittany Patterson. She's a proud mother to her 14-month-old son. She holds a BS in Human Development and Family Studies, and she is a new doula trained through the Birthing People Foundation and a graduate of BreastfeedLA Lactation Educator Specialist Program. She is also the founder and facilitator of the Birthwrite Diaries Storytelling Group. And the final speaker, Adjoa Jones, is a longtime County of Los Angeles Department of Health Services employee and co-lead for the South LA South Bay African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Community Action Team. She received her BS in Health Science Care Administration from CSU Dominguez Hills and most recently completed her MBA in Nonprofit Management at the American Jewish University. A few housekeeping notes for listeners. You can, of course, ask questions throughout the presentations, and some questions we can answer in the chat, and others will wait till the end of the presentation portion. And now let's get started.
Okay, so just to be clear, because you mentioned Jessica going, but I'm going to go first.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I thought, never mind. Go ahead. Brittany, you'll be first.
Okay. Are you guys able to see my slides right now?
No, not yet, Brittany, but they're coming.
Okay, are we good now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here. As mentioned, my name is Brittany Patterson. I'm the founder of Birthwrite and also Birthwrite Diaries, which is a mom's group. It's a storytelling group where we get together and talk about our birth experiences. Also, we talk about lactation, breastfeeding, and just momhood journey, womanhood, all of that. And that was really birthed out of my pregnancy, my labor, my birth, and my postpartum experience. And so it was a passion project turned into a purpose. And so I've just continued to move forward with it. And, I am a doula. I'm also a lactation educator, as mentioned, and I'm mother to a 15-month-old baby boy. His name is Roderick III, but we call him Ro, and I'm partnered to Rod. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into my story. And what I really wanted to do, especially for any listeners out here who are currently expecting or are anticipating caused a lot of stress and anxiety on me and my family. And so I want to share some of the things that really stood out during those appointments. So we find out we're pregnant, we're excited, we're nervous, the typical things that come up of a lot of questions that you might have around, well, what do we do now? How do we prepare? And the OBGYN that we had an appointment with, she was less than excited. I don't know if she was having a bad day or what, but she was really not that kind. And it just wasn't the experience that we expected to receive, when we're expecting a child, which is a blessing. And so there was no eye contact that she made with my partner. We tried different ways to connect with her, asking her questions, and it was just like a brick wall. And the only little bit of attention that she did get robbed is to let him know that he didn't have to attend all the appointments, that they get monotonous, and you really just don't need to be at all of them, so you don't have to come if you don't want. So I felt like that was her way of trying to nicely say, I'd rather you not be here. And I felt that that was inappropriate. It was unsolicited advice, and of course he should be there. And also, if your appointments are monotonous, there's the same thing happening, then I feel like that's an issue, that's a problem, because you have a life growing inside of you. So there should always be new questions coming up, excitement, maybe some fears, some concerns, different emotions that come up, and you expect your care provider to help with that. So these are red flags, and if these come up, they need to be addressed. And if it continues, then I would definitely recommend switching providers. Second prenatal appointment, I chose to book with the OBGYN who performed my pap smear. And she was more bubbly. However, she definitely had the I'm the doctor, I know what's best syndrome. And I mean, it was even more frustrating. I literally left. I'm sure my blood pressure was probably up, because when I left, I just felt I was a mess. I felt horrible. And we came into the second appointment with more knowledge, understanding the health crisis within Black maternal health. And so I had questions about the hospital. I wanted to know the stats. I wanted to know, this is what I saw, and I want to make sure, or this is what I read about the C-section rate, the percentage, is that correct? Is it actually this low, or is it more? And just questions around, my birth preferences of having an unmedicated birth. How can you support with that? What's your protocols? And she was not able to answer those questions. She consistently interrupted and talked over me. She tried to fill in the things that I was saying. She tried to fill in my sentences as if she knew what I was going to say. She was sharing things that I already knew, and she would have known that if she had taken the time to really listen. So I just really felt unheard. Still no eye contact to Rod. It was a mess. So I literally had to go home and kind of like take a spiritual bath, and I immediately went on a walk and just had to speak over myself, pray over myself, because some of the things she was bringing up as well were, she attached the narrative to my body, bringing up things around high blood pressure. I don't know if you'll have preeclampsia. I'm not sure if there'll be any infection. All these different things that she brought up were really, I felt like, her way of planting seeds, whether it was intentional or not. And so, again, red flags. And so I decided not to meet with her anymore. And then moving on to third and fourth prenatal appointment, I did speak to people, or speak to insurance representatives, and I was able to meet with a midwife. So my third appointment, the midwife was nice. She did provide eye contact to Rod. But one thing that I want to point out is we're not just looking for nice. Nice can still get you a birth outcome that you didn't intend. Nice can still, that challenges come with that. So it's not just about being nice. It's about really having a strong, supportive care team that are in your corner, who understand your values, who are compassionate and very supportive of the birth plan and preferences that you have, and can respect you, your cultural beliefs, all of that. And if that's not the case, nice is not going to work. So that's really important to know. So with the third midwife, although she, like I mentioned, she was nice, I felt like she was not adequate enough to support me in the birth that I was looking for. And I left feeling again nervous, because I was told during that appointment that the nurses are really busy, and so they seldom have time to support you during your labor process. So a lot of women end up opting for an epidural, and so that's just really the reality of the situation. But you're welcome to try to have that birth outcome of unmedicated birth if you want. That was her response to me asking how many or what percentage of families have you helped or supported with an unmedicated birth. And so I felt like, okay, I'm going to really have to do this on my own. So she recommended another midwife who previously owned her own midwifery practice. And so I felt comfortable with her. We talked. I asked her about her birth story, and she had 2 home water births. And so I felt that she was more equipped to support me. There was still a lot of emotional and spiritual connection it just wasn't there. It was non-existent. And so I really I felt like I forfeited that. I also sought to have to seek care at a birth center, but my insurance would not cover it. I went through my employer, the HR, everything, and they were not willing to cover it. And so I had to just prepare as best as I could for the birth experience I wanted in the hospital setting. And so that's what I did. And so My labor and birth experience, I knew that I needed to labor at home for as long as possible. I felt more comfortable doing that. So I did labor at home in the stores all over the place, our neighborhood. And I went into labor at 10 a.m., August 19th, and I arrived at the hospital around 7:15, 7:36. I was 6 centimeters dilated, about -2 gestation, I believe. And then I labored for another 6.5 hours and delivered my son at 1:59. Something else that I do want to point out is that I did have a Black nurse. That was the first time that I saw a Black healthcare provider or Black birth worker supporting me on this journey. And so I was so grateful when I saw her. I did feel safe. And although she didn't provide the physical hands-on support, she did provide a lot of verbal coaching, breath work, encouragement, and she respected and believed in the birth plan and made sure that every other healthcare provider that came in or health person part of the healthcare team understood and knew, what our beliefs and our preferences were. So I really appreciate that a lot. And I was gratefully able to accomplish my birth goal with a lot of preparation, a lot of breath work, a lot of surrender, counter pressure from my partner, Rod, and I birthed my baby boy. And there were other things I did too that was not recommended, or it wasn't just it. When I say recommended, they didn't not recommend it. They just didn't give me these tools or resources. There were things that I had to find out for myself by talking to other midwives and other people and books and things like that. So I did opt for chiropractic care. I did opt for pregnancy massage. I did opt for acupuncture and other herbal remedies to just strengthen and ripen my uterus and prepare, for labor, as well as a lot of exercise, stretching, and just really tap in, prayer, visualization, so many different things that I did. So that was really my birth experience. And then I had one more experience that was not less than ideal. For the most part, everything went as planned, but I chose not to have any fluids as well or IV during my labor, but they wanted to give me a hep lock. I ended up agreeing to do that, and the anesthesiologist let me know he would do it in between contractions. And I'm sitting on the birth ball, had a contraction coming, and I pull back, tell him to hold on, and he's like, "No, I got to get this in." And he pulls my arm, so I had to just really just be still and just allow, the contraction, that the power moving through my body to just do its thing. But he really violated my space. And afterwards, when I, sharing my story is when I really was able to process this. And I'm like, that was not cool. Even still, when I think about it, it makes me cringe. I don't like that he did that, especially when there was no emergency or no reason for him to rush. He just really didn't respect my space. But other than that, after that, everything else went smoothly. There were some other preferences. I wanted to keep the placenta and my placenta, which I was able to do, but I did get a little pushback from the midwife, and warning against, doing those type of things. So there's just a lot of barriers, when it comes to, there can be a lot of barriers depending on what your birth preferences are in a hospital setting. And then, as I mentioned, just processing my experience, what I've been doing, like once I gave birth, I was really excited and proud of myself. And I wanted to share it with other families, with other women. And I also wanted to connect and talk to other people and say, was this your birth experience? Or what was your birth experience like? And, I just didn't really feel there was something missing. There was a connection missing, in the care, the prenatal care that I received. And I also wanted to warn women, that we've got to prepare, and not just women, because it's a family issue. We need to prepare and know what we're gonna just prepare for what could come up when navigating our healthcare system. So conversations with family helped a lot. Understanding the birth experiences that my mother had, that my grandmother had, all of that played parts in, questions that I showed up to the hospital asking during prenatal appointments, and research that I did. And just reflecting, writing, moms groups, virtual events, birth worker trainings, all of that really helped. And then just ancestral history, which leads me to the Black midwife. And this is something I feel that we really have to talk more about, and we have to be honest with ourselves about, the history in this country. And Black midwifery is really the beginning. A lot of the traditions, a lot of the things you see now, some of the trainings that are non-Black, these are skills, tools, resources, wisdom, things that the grand midwives utilized. And so these things were stolen and taken from them and, rebranded and put out there. And so we have to be honest about that. And, birth became medicalized and, it's a whole, I don't even have time to get into all of it, but birth became medicalized and moved into the hospital. And since then, it's been a disruption of Black traditions, and we have been losing our Black mothers. And, it's a crisis, and we have to fix it. We really have to turn away. We have to turn back. We have to look at history. We have to look at what did work, what doesn't work. We have to look at the data. It's really important. And I also want to say just knowing your options. So part of knowing your options is, well, first knowing your history, and then knowing, the places that you have to birth at. And I think with midwifery, well, let me start with the places of birth. So hospital settings, that's one place you can give birth. That is where 98% of birthing people are having their births. But then there's also birth centers. There's home births. There's water births. And I think that, we see an increase in families turning to birth centers and turning to home birth settings as well because of COVID-19 and just wanting a different model of care. And sometimes that's not supported when you're in a hospital setting and you ask about birth centers. Sometimes there are, it's not like really, they're not being honest or being very transparent about what that experience can be. There's still a lot of myths that, it's unsafe, and that's not true. If you're low risk. And so I think that we really have to have that conversation and talk about this. And one of my elders, Shafia Monroe, in the Black community, she's a midwife. I love what she said. She said, we must abandon our fear. We have to abandon the fear of birth. We have been pushed all this propaganda around what birth looks like and how horrific it is and how painful it is. And, it really doesn't have to be that way. It's really beautiful. It's a rite of passage. And so we have to turn away from that so that we can look at our other options and know, because right now it can be, depending on the hospital that you're giving birth at, it's very dangerous if you are a Black person, Black or brown person. Care providers as well. So knowing if you want to be seen by OBGYN or midwives. And I know that here in the US, we have a low ratio of OBs and midwives to the number of births that we're having. When you look at other countries, you look at Sweden, New Zealand, all these, there are a lot of developed countries. You see, they have quadruple the number of midwives that we have. They have a larger midwife community than OBGYNs. So we have to ask ourselves, why do we have more surgeons than we have midwives who are skilled and trained to support people through a natural birth process with limited augmentation? We really have to ask ourselves those questions. And just knowing your insurance when you're selecting an insurance, or if the insurance you already have, looking to see what is the coverage and looking at our options, looking at the costs. I think that's really, really important. Okay, and then how am I doing on time? I am almost finished. So I'm going to go ahead and just wrap up. Some questions to ask your provider, finding out what the statistics are. Those are things that I already mentioned. Sharing your birth preferences and listen carefully to how they respond to that as well. And asking, are they positive and affirming? Are they discouraging or, focusing on what can go wrong? If so, that's a red flag and it needs to be addressed. Do they offer suggestions, strategies to work towards your birth vision? If not, maybe there's someone that's a better fit that can support you in the vision you have. It's one thing to just say, oh yeah, I support you. Okay, how can you help me? What has worked with other women who have come through, who you supported, that have wanted the same experience? Those are questions to really hash out and ask. What are their personal experiences giving birth, if applicable? How was their experience? Delayed cord clamping. And again, the most essential right now is COVID-19, the policies that they have for COVID. What does that look like? Can I have a doula with me? Is my partner going to be able to be there? All these questions. Separation. What are their protocols? And then solutions and involvement is really number one. Listen to Black families. Listen to us. Hear us. Don't assume. hold healthcare providers and hospitals accountable. We do that by having discussions with our friends, our family, our networks, and sharing. You know, if we had a less than ideal situation, I wouldn't recommend this midwife, or I wouldn't recommend, you know, that OBGYN. We have to talk because how many times do we hear stories where families something has happened and unfortunately a life was lost, a mother lost her life, and then we find out that this wasn't the first interaction with this OB or this midwife where there were complaints about the neglect or the racism or whatever it was. A lot of times it's not when something tragic like that happens, it's not a first offense. It's happened before, and so we have to talk about that. And we have to hold them accountable. Another way is to support Black organizations and businesses, birth workers, donating money to a lot. There's so much happening right now. I just don't have time to name all of it, but I will share some links with you guys for some work of different organizations to look into. Black Mamas Matter Alliance, Kimberly Sears Alves. She is one of the co-founders of the Black Breastfeeding Week, and she has an amazing app that is in development to help. It's almost like Yelp for birth. And so you can go on there and find like hospitals and care providers and really get information on them. You know, is this somebody worth seeing or not? So these are the type of organizations and innovation that we really need to be supporting, you know, to make healthcare better, more accessible, and just the type of care, make it transparent for everyone. And well, especially for, you know, Black families. Highlighting Black maternal health books. So this is something else that we can do. It's something that I do want to talk to you guys about with the LA Public Library, and how we can put that out there more and just give access to Black midwifery books and the history. Getting involved in your community, so joining your local AIMM community action team, which I am a part of, and that is the African American Infant and Maternal Mortality. You guys will hear more about that from Adjoa, so I'm excited for her to touch on that. But there's so many different events that are held, opportunities that you learn about. I was able to do my doula training through an initiative from AIMM, and so there's tons of resources. And I'm really excited about the SPA 2 AIMM here in Santa Clarita that just kicked off, and we have our next meeting in January. But a lot of great work that's happening in these spaces, and I really encourage you all to get involved in your local AIMM community action team, depending on what region that you're in. And I'll also give a link for that as well. And that is it. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Wade, and I am the founder of Mighty Little Giants, which is a nonprofit organization that supports families who have babies in the NICU. And so I'm a mommy, I'm a wife, and today I will be sharing my story, and I'll be telling you what I'm doing because of our story and how we're supporting moms. So next slide, please. So our story, so our prenatal story. Me and my husband, we first find out we're expecting, we're super excited. This is something that we've always wanted. And so we're going to our first doctor's appointment. And at the doctor's appointment, our doctor tells us, well, you're pregnant, but you're pregnant with quote unquote empty sacs, meaning that there's no heartbeat. So she told us we needed to get an emergency D&C. At this point, this is my first pregnancy. I don't know what that is. My husband, we don't know what that is. And so she explained to us that it's the same procedure that they do when you're getting an abortion. We thought it sounded invasive. My husband said, you know, can we wait a couple weeks? Will this affect Jessica? And she said, no, let's just push it back a week and a half or two. So we waited 2 weeks. We get to our appointment. And when we get there, you guys, not only do they find one heartbeat, but they find two. So in that moment, I put myself in a young mother's mind, like, oh my goodness, what if I was this young mom who came up here by myself, trusted, put my faith in the doctors and had them do this procedure where I would have missed out on a beautiful experience. So we were pregnant with twins, but one of the baby's heartbeats was extremely slow. So we knew that one of the baby's heartbeats, the baby will possibly vanish. So at this point, I'm 6 weeks pregnant. So between 6 weeks pregnant and 21 weeks pregnant, I went to urgent care 7 times, you guys, 7 times. I knew that something was not right with my body. I went to 3 different urgent cares because I knew, I was like, I'm not going crazy. Like, something is happening. One of the baby's heartbeats did vanish, but we still had our other son. And so it turns out I was not okay. My water ended up breaking at 21 weeks pregnant, and I had to go into hospital bed rest. And so at this point, now knowing what I know now, I wish that I had the resources. I wish that somebody mentioned, even telling me about what a cerclage is, or how we can figure out how we can save your pregnancy, just anything, but we left with no resources. So at this point, I'm on hospital bed rest. They tell me, Jess, you'll probably be here for a week. We don't know how long, you can go home and see what happens, or you can stay here. So we decided we're going to stay at the hospital. As long as this baby has a heartbeat, we're going to do everything that we can. So it turned out I was not there a week. I was there for 58 days on my back trying to save our son's life. And we went through a lot while I was in the hospital. Me and my husband, we lost like everything that we could lose. We lost house, cars, jobs, you name it, but we didn't lose each other. While on bed rest, I went through a lot of being overlooked. I mean, some nurses cared, some nurses didn't. They switch every 12 hours. So you just hope that you got the same one you got the day before. And it's to the point where the day I was actually in labor, I was telling the nurse, like, listen, I'm in pain. This is different. She was like, no, you're fine. Just breathe. You're fine. Just breathe. And so my husband was working at LAX. We're in Lancaster at this time. So we didn't have our cars. And he had to take the train to get back to here. It was going to take too long. So I called my mother, who was in West Covina at the time. And I said, Mom, I need you to get here. Nobody's listening to me. I'm sweating. I'm crying. So by the time my mom got there, you guys, it took her a while to get there, but she got there. She had to cause a fuss. And because of what she did, they finally checked me, and I was 10 centimeters dilated. And like, every time I say that, I get chills because like nobody listened to me. Like, don't look at the monitors. Don't look at anything. Look at me. You know that there's a problem. And turns out the thing on my belly that picks up the contractions, it was broken. So I literally had my son in the hallway. Like, we didn't make it to labor and delivery. We almost did. And, my son at this point is 27 weeks and 6 days. So with NICU babies or premature babies, they need to be incubated right away. They need to, their body temperature, it's a very stressful situation. So when my son came out, he cried. I was thankful for that. And they put him in a bag and they ran. So from that point, I go to our NICU experience. So Marlon Jr. was born on February 27th, and he was 2 pounds, and he was born at 27 weeks and 6 days. And in the NICU, it's a very stressful place. It's a traumatic experience. One thing that I tell nurses when I'm training, I tell them that these mothers, they're grieving. They're grieving the mothers who have the babies in the NICU. They're grieving not being able to take their baby home. They're grieving their birth experience. They're grieving not being able to have a baby shower. There's so many levels to the grief. And so from that, our son was doing really, really good in the NICU. And then my husband started talking to the nurse, and he said, I'm noticing every time you guys feed him with his tube lately, like, he was doing good, but all of a sudden he started desatting more. We're elevating the amount of oxygen. And they were like, no, he's fine. Pretty much telling him, you don't know what you're talking about. Turns out he was not fine. On Easter Sunday in 2014, he had a complete respiratory failure. They were feeding him so much that the milk came out and collapsed his lungs, and he had to be emergency airlifted to Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. And from that moment, I was just like, oh my goodness, how in the world? Like, I'm grateful that our son made it through. He was in the NICU for 143 days. He was the sickest baby in the unit for a long time. He was on 12 drips, on 12 different medications at once. He was intubated on an oscillator. He had a PICC line. He had 3 heart murmurs. And just not having the support that I needed at that time from nurses, it was very traumatic. And so from there, Marlon was in the NICU 143 days, and then he was discharged. And then we go into our postpartum. So for me, I always tell moms, especially mommies in the NICU and staff who support moms in the NICU, that for NICU families, the day the baby's discharged, that's day 1 for us. because they go from a complete controlled environment to an environment where they have to create their new normal, where they don't know what that is. For me, I lived in the Ronald McDonald House for 3 months. So I had to readjust myself. I had to readjust my marriage to bringing a baby home who had oxygen, who had a heart murmur, who was on medication every 4 hours. And I was in a dark place of postpartum depression. I'm normally always a happy person, so I was able to mask that with a smile, but I didn't have the support that I needed. And so that's where we birthed Mighty Little Giants. So next slide, please. So first, I want to give you guys some NICU tips, okay? I'm going to try to zoom this in. Thank you. So these are some tips that I just wanted to throw in here for moms who might be experiencing the NICU experience, or if you know anybody, or if you support people who have babies in the NICU. So this is just for any moms in particular. In your first trimester of your pregnancy, verify that your delivering hospital has a NICU and research the diversity of the staff. So verifying that the hospital has a NICU, you can do this online, you can call, it just helps a lot as far as if something does come up where you don't have to travel as far. And as far as the diversity, this is something that might be a little harder. So a question that you can ask your provider, I'm looking at my notes, is ask the provider about the implicit bias anti-racism training that they receive to be compliant with SB 464. And so this is for hospitals in California. SB 464 mandates that hospitals provide patients with their patient rights and how to complain if they receive disrespectful care. So this is something that you can ask, and you must get information on that. They have to verify that with you. So know your parental rights. When you're admitted into the hospital, you get your patient rights. And when you're admitted into the NICU, you get your parental rights. And so that's something you can get from the social worker. Every NICU family has a social worker that they work with. Another tip would be to request a family meeting in the NICU. I had no clue about this, you guys. So a family meeting is where you can let one of the nurses know that you're interested in a family meeting. And what that is a doctor, a charge nurse, and a respiratory therapist, whatever services that your child is getting in the NICU, one person from each department will sit down and you can learn more about what their job is, what their job entails. So you're not lost during the rounds. And another point I put is join in on the morning rounds if you're available to. So the morning rounds is pretty much when the team meets and rounds around your baby. This goes into my next point is advocate and do not second guess yourself. By you being able to attend the rounds, you know more about your baby. Personally, you already know more about your baby. That's your child. But on the medical side, you are the consistent ear. So if something is said in the rounds, they want to try something that you know didn't work yesterday, use your voice and advocate. It saved my son's life. I advocated to the point where I had to meet with the director of the NICU over something that the nurse did, and she was completely in the wrong. And this is something I always tell people, advocate, because you're not only saving your child's life, you could be saving another child that the nurses are working with. Next slide, please. So now we're getting into Mighty Little Giants. I want to share with you guys what we're doing with Mighty Little Giants. So Mighty Little Giants is a national 501c3 nonprofit organization that advocates for mothers and fathers experiencing preterm deliveries resulting in long-term stays in hospital NICUs. Our mission is to bridge and stand in the gap for families with babies in the NICU by embracing our core values, which are integrity, compassion, and encouragement, ultimately giving them the peace that they need in the midst of their storm. So I want to share you guys, okay, I have to throw this out. All the pictures on here, these are some of the babies that have gone through our program. Picture on the right, that's my husband and my son, and then me and my son in the middle. But with Mighty Little Giants, we really want to give these families peace in the midst of the storm, something that we desperately needed. Next slide, please. So our programs right now, we have our NICU support program, and what that is, pre-COVID, we would go into a couple of hospitals and we would host our craft and conversation sessions where we would paint, we would eat, we would talk, and we would really just create a family support system. There's something so powerful that happens when you get everybody in the same room. We talk about their struggles, we encourage, we laugh, we cry, we pray, whatever is needed in that moment. But right now we are doing our support services virtually, which has expanded the amount of families we can service, and our flyers in the slide. So I'll go over that then. And then our Life After the NICU program is that is what it is, supporting families after they get out of the NICU. A lot of the babies receive the therapy that they need after the NICU. But as far as the families, my son's therapist became my therapist because I was like, oh my gosh, here's an adult I can talk to and tell her what's going on, and I could cry. But I wanted to create a family and a sister circle for mothers, in particular mothers of color, on just how to be a bond for each other, how we can get through this with each other. And then our Mighty Little Angels program is near and dear to my heart. This is something, it's a peer-to-peer grief support program for our babies who don't make it out the NICU, who transition over before. So yeah, so these are the current programs that we have. Next slide, please. So our partners, I always want to share our partners who believe in the work and who support the work, and a little background of the committees that we're on to advocate for Black moms and babies. And for me personally, my education is in early childhood administration. So my goal is to not only help my families as they go through the NICU, but to go ahead and help them throughout the milestones of their children. I'm also a certified doula and a lactation education specialist. And so, yes, next slide, please. So NICU moms deserve doula services too. I had to throw this in here because if I had a doula as I was going through my postpartum period, especially a doula who experienced the NICU, my life would have been changed. And so with that, we provide support and advocacy, lactation education, emotional support, and just tips on natural remedies that you can use for your body. Like Brittany said, the next slide, please. So it's okay. Let's talk NICU. We do, like I said, we host bi-weekly support groups. So we're doing it every first and third Friday of the month. We gather virtually, we bring our lunch, we bring our tea, and we sit and we chat and we talk NICU. We create a sister circle where we can just really talk about what we're going through, our struggles. And it's something that people look forward to. We get updates as we go. And like I always tell our moms, I love all the babies we work with. I go to birthday parties and I also go to funeral services. And so it really truly becomes a family. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. This is our contact information. If you would like to get involved with our work or learn more, our website, mightylittlegiants.org. And please follow us on Instagram, Mighty Little Giants, and see all of our babies. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you, ladies. Powerful, powerful. I feel like I might have to change my presentation in honor of Jessica and Brittany and all of the other moms. I love the shirt, Doula Right Thing. So, which is just basically saying do the right thing. So that's the conversation we're going to have today, is how we do the right thing. So thank you, Brittany and Jessica, for all that you shared. And thank you to Maternal Mental Health Now and the LA Public Health Library for having me and having us on to talk about what is happening, racism in maternal health, racism in maternal mental health, racism in Black infant and maternal mortality and its impact in LA County and really across our nation. Let me see if I can share my screen appropriately. Okay, let's see. I want to be able to pull up my presentation. Hold on. Yep, it looks like I can. I don't know. You guys tell me when you can see, because I'm not really good with this one right here. Can you see my screen yet? I would have to be the one where there's a screen share issue. Okay, here it is. Okay, tell me where you could see it. All right. Am I in? I still can't tell. Somebody would have to tell me. Hold on. Give me a moment. It's coming together.
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay. Yeah. Only thing is that is not the one we wanted to share. Can you see it now? Ooh, everything went away. Hold on. I'm coming, you all. Just give me a moment to get this together. That is why I really wanted Neil to have my slides. Okay. Why did that go away? And I had it all prepped for you all. Anyway, while I get this PowerPoint together, I'm going to talk to you. Okay, there it is. Okay, there it is. So am I sharing or are you sharing, Neil? I think I'm still sharing. Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you today about is racism in maternal health and what we've been doing in LA County. My name is Adjoa Jones. As shared, I am the Associate Director of Regional Collaboration with Service Planning Area 6 for Department of Health Services, Whole Person Care. And so what we are doing in this work is we had to either assign ourselves to a community action team or establish one out of our 6 issues of focus. And one was high-risk maternal health. And so this was the same time the LA County Department of Public Health and the Center for Health Equity was looking at Black infant health and Black infant mortality, which is something that we've been doing in LA County since the early 90s. But today, just to share with you, going to go back and give you a little bit of history of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then talk to you more about racism and its impact and how it's impacted what has been going on for African American women, really for 401 years here in America. So today's objective: be grounded in the history and data of Black infant and maternal health in American LA. Learn about the LA County African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Initiative and the South LA South Bay AIM CAT, and learn what you can do to get involved. So infant mortality is the death of an infant before their first birthday. And so the same can be said similarly for maternal mortality. It is the death of a woman within a year of either giving birth, while pregnant, during labor and delivery, or within a year of live birth or even termination. And so generally it's some chain of events or something that has happened as a result of aggravation of the pregnancy complication, a chain of events initiated by pregnancy, or the aggravation of an unrelated condition by the physiological effects of pregnancy. And this includes stress. And so we'll talk about racism and its impact and how it has caused stress on the African American body, so much so that it then caused some health risk and some impact to a pregnancy and even to the life of a child. So when did the U.S. start dealing with this infant mortality or start seeing the gap? It's almost been 2 centuries when the U.S. began recording in 1850 the infant maternal mortality race gap, whereas the Black infant mortality rate was 340 per 1,000 and the white rate was 217 per 1,000. This is the data. Looking at this graph here, if you can see it, the top line, which is in pink, represents Black infant mortality. And it represents where we are in LA County, or where we've been from 2000 to 2016. So if you can see at the top, we started out at about 12.8 and then kind of went down a little between 2005, 2010, and then began to go back up in about 2016. And so though we don't get the data year by year, we should be coming up on a point where we'll see what our data is showing points of if we've gone down. But the differential here is that if you look at the white line, which is kind of going in with the orange for Latina or the Latinx community, we are 3.3 times higher. So Black babies are dying at 2 to 3 times the rate of white babies in LA County. So what does the data show by district? So you heard some of the ladies talk about AIM, and we'll talk about why we had those created in various regions throughout our county. So Southwest being SPA 6, including Compton, you could see our infant mortality death rate was about 15.4%, and the rate is 10 per 1,000 in Southwest. Inglewood, 9.3, Antelope Valley, pretty high, 12.1, South LA, 12.7, Long Beach, 8.5, and Compton, 9.3. So as you can see here, South Bay, some of the cities in South Bay in various areas of Los Angeles County, as well as Antelope Valley, which includes Lancaster, Palmdale, have very high rates for LA County as it relates to Black infant mortality. What that looks like, according to CDC, in a year, we lose approximately 4,000 Black babies nationwide. And so at one point, Dr. Ferrer shared her analysis of that, or the LA County's analysis of that. Looks like about 640. And I have to look at if that, what year's span of time. But if we lose about 640 babies, she equated that to about a full elementary in LA County, which, whether that's every other year, every 2-3 years combined, whatever that case is, it is still too many infants to be lost, especially when this is a time when the county began to say what the causes were of infant mortality. Though we know prematurity and low birth weight, and you heard that expressed through Jessica's share of her story of prematurity and her experience, her and her husband's in the NICU with baby Marlon, then there's potential for long-term complications, risk for early death in life, medical complications, disability, and chronic diseases later in life. And so what began to happen around the same time was that public health, Dr. Ferrer acknowledged that racism was one of the leading causes of infant mortality. At the same time in our nation, around 2017, we began to see more and more articles talking about what was happening with Black moms. Why are Black moms dying at such a high rate? So nationally, Black mothers die at 3 to 4 times the rate of white mothers. In LA County, it's as high as 4.4 times the rate of other women. This is one of the widest of all racial disparities in women's health. And you can see here on the graph how high we are looking at African American women, 61.3, 63.5, and 65.1. And you go down to white women, 16.1, and then even Hispanic and Asian women, they're in the 13 to 14 range, but we are simply way too high in that. And so the conversations begin to happen about what is the differential, how this was impacting women across the spectrum. And this was the first time we got to hear that racism was the issue, not race, but racism. And I'll talk with you a little more about that. So we also begin to look at it across our LA County region. The county is divided into 8 service planning areas. And so SPA 6, you can see, is the highest, SPA 8, then second, and then SPA 1, Antelope Valley, same areas we talked about. And so this, caused us to have not just pause, but caused us to look at, okay, these are the causes: postpartum hemorrhaging, high blood pressure, infection, termination of pregnancy, pulmonary embolism, other direct complications, or other indirect causes. But what are we doing about it, and why is this happening? So we began to talk about it. What explains this gap? Okay, we heard racism. You heard racism. You heard some of the women talked about not being listened to. And in times past, some of the conversations or the misperceptions would be, oh, it has to do with socioeconomic status. Oh, it has to do with the mother's educational level or her behavior or access to healthcare. Okay, well, if that's the case, what happened with Serena, who's a multimillionaire and a world-renowned athlete? What happened with Beyonce, who's a entertainer, the same and world renowned? What happened with Shalon Irving, who worked for CDC? What was happening that would cause this to be those women's outcome or a challenge? And so we began to look into more about what had been our historical practice here. What had been said that most of these types of disparities has always been blamed on Black folks. That here in this article that was shared by Nina Martin of ProPublica, when they did the story about Black mothers who keep dying after giving birth, and they tell Shalon Irving's story, it also talked about then it was our mass imperfection, our susceptibility to illness, or we don't listen when the doctors tell us these different things. But now many social scientists and medical researchers begin to agree the problem isn't race, but racism. So we have to look at that. And before we could really go in and create some programs, we began to just say, okay, this is what's happening. Okay, it's racism. Okay, what is racism doing to Black moms and babies? This adverse social experience, this psychological stress. And so even Dr. Adjoa Jones talks about the weathering experience and how this stress, how racism begins to impact us, so that in weathering, or they give the example of how it's almost like running an engine constantly. And as that continues to build up in the body, if you ran your engine constantly with no brakes, then what would happen to it? It's a similar experience of our weathering and what is going on in our body after time and time again, whether it's on the job, whether it's in a healthcare setting, whether it's driving while Black, whether it's living while Black, whether it's jogging while Black, whether it's just moving while Black. What is this cumulative stress doing to us, and how it impacts not just everyday individuals, not just Black men who are out, in that practice of living and breathing and getting pulled over continuously, but Black women who are the birthers, who are giving life, who are bringing children into our society, who are the womb carriers, right? And so we looked at that. Moms Rise and shared this. And this was key and critical for me and many of us when we started to have this conversation, just like I shared with you, the 4,000 Black babies dying annually. To hear that Black women were 243% more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. And this was on average with white women who, if even Black women who were educated, who had several degrees, who are just college educated or were doing well in life, fared worse than white women with no high school completion, no high school graduation. And so how CDC, well, I won't say it was CDC, how the article termed this was that a Black woman is 22% more likely to die from heart disease than a white woman, 71% more likely to perish from cervical cancer, but 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth related causes. And so that began to make many of us look back like, well, why is that? How did some of this get started? And so we went to this situation where we looked at what had happened around the same time. And in the midst of this, we began to look at how, and many women throughout our nation, Black women, women of color, were talking about tearing down these systems of oppression, changing and looking at structural and systemic racism and its impact. And so we go into the story of who is Dr. J. Marion Sims and how he's been touted as the father of gynecology in America. And in other places throughout the world, they have statues of him, even in Africa. And so in this picture, this next picture here is an illustration of Dr. Sims. And if you look at the picture here, you can see that he has these, there's about two women looking behind this sheet, but on the table is a slave by the name of Anarcha. And he's there at the front and he has two other colleagues looking on. And Anarcha was one of the slaves that he performed surgeries, approximately 30 surgeries on without anesthesia. And this was something that he was doing so that he could create things like the speculum. He was the one that created the speculum, but he was working on the repair of the vesicovaginal fistula, which was this area right between the vagina and anal area. And so this was an obstruction that many women were suffering from at the time. But he did not have to do this on the backs of Black women, performing surgeries on them without anesthetic, because we have this perceived perception of being able to endure more pain, when there were white women that were having similar surgeries with anesthesia. So some of what the article that ProPublica did about, why Black women keep dying after birth, some of the conversations Black women were talking about was that, we can perceive the feeling of racism is just, when you can feel that contempt, you go in a store, or like the lady said, listening to Brittany share her story about how her partner was completely ignored, or, not encouraged to be there, or how, a lot of the women, have expressed, our clients and our partners have expressed how their partner was just not even looked at. It was as if he wasn't even there. And these are the things that we experienced and picked up. There's subtle ways it seems subtle, but to others, but to us, we can feel this and we perceive this. And why has that been? And in order for us to do this, we had to go back again. Like I said, we had to be honest. Many times, some of us have been talking about racism for years, and we've been told by even other people of color, and we've been told by other, even, non-Black folks, white folks, that, oh, that happened years ago. That's not happening now. Well, I believe in June, we learned that that was not the truth. I believe prior to June with Breonna Taylor, we learned that that was not the truth with both Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. But what an American historian, I picked this picture up when I went to DC last year, and this was in the National History of African American Museum. I have to say that name right, but the Smithsonian Museum, the one that was created during President Obama's term in office. And John Hope Franklin was an American historian who did this book, From Slavery to Freedom, A History of African Americans, and he first published it in 1947. And basically, his goal was for us to tell our truth. We, as the descendants of the African slave here in America, we have a truth, and we have a right to tell the unvarnished truth, which is not often done, even in our schools for our children. There's a watered down version of the truth, or it's not told at all. Who were we? We were previously, what was our role here in America? We were previously chattel, personal property of slave owners, and used as a commodity to work and reproduce. Our reproduction was basically for someone else to make money off of. Our reproduction was never really about us. And even so much so, there's stories of granny midwives, there's stories of wet nurses, but they don't tell the story that actually, as much as we were hated, we were the foundation. We were the ones who fed this nation, that many times Black women had to feed the master and Mrs. Child had to be their wet nurse, breastfeed them at the expense of their child going hungry and even suffering from malnutrition and dying. But those stories are never shared widely, right? So, but we're doing that. And that's what we began to do in order to do this work. If Black women experience discrimination, talking about these visits, talking about going to the doctor, talking about the feeling constantly, like Jessica said, 8 visits to the urgent care, nobody's listening. Sitting up there in the hospital at the point of being dilated 10 centimeters, and everybody's looking at all the equipment, but nobody looks at the fact that the equipment is even broken. So you're not even properly monitoring this woman's pregnancy, in the process of labor and delivery, right? So if Black women experience discrimination, which was key and essential, is that they would not go, and it's a critical time after you deliver, especially if you're high risk, to avoid preeclampsia, hypertension, those things, that you go back and see your provider if you're given the right information to what to look out for. If you're like, we have one young lady that just worked with on a documentary we're doing called Birthing While Black, and the sister had, and she's a very petite woman and an actress, but she had her legs had grown the size of what some look at as elephantitis after she delivered. And had she not gotten back to the hospital at that time, even though she had been calling during COVID, she would have died. And these are some of the things of being dismissed and ignored. And so some women have not even gone back for their postpartum visits, but they have gone to schedule their children's pediatrician visit. So it doesn't mean that we don't listen. It means that after a time, you get tired of going to the same place to talk to the same people that are not acknowledging you in the first place. And so you'll back out, and it's even proven when it comes to women in heart disease, women tend to show up too late when if they had showed up early because they're taking care of everybody else. So you'll back off and still get the care for your child, but not yourself. So how do we change what many want to ignore due to their discomfort? We have to talk about it. We have to address it. We have to do what these young ladies are doing and what we've created in our work, and I'll share more about that. We have to address these experiences which have resulted in negative outcomes appropriately. Glad for the programs that anti-racism, diversion and inclusion bill that, or the policy that just went out by the board, that is going to create more work even in our county systems to change the narrative for Black people. Racism and implicit bias defined. You talked about SB 464. Thankful to Senator Holly Mitchell, who's now our Board of Supervisor-elect for the 2nd District, and Black Women for Wellness, Nerbese Flint, who wrote the bill SB 464, the Pregnancy and Dignity in Childbirth Act, which has hospitals and doctors having to, and anyone who comes in contact with pregnant women, having to be trained and in-person training pre-COVID, to deal with racism and implicit bias. Racism being the prejudice and discrimination or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based upon someone else's belief of their superiority. And implicit bias refers to our attitudes, our stereotypes. We all have attitudes and stereotypes towards others. Whether we want to acknowledge them or not, it is the truth. And because of those stereotypes, I even shared in our comment section that article that CNN put out, that Black babies are 3 times more likely to die in the care of a white doctor than in the care of Black doctors. Why is that? It has to have something to do with how we're behaving towards one another. So going back to, like Brittany shared, what's being done to combat this public health crisis affecting the Black community? The health agency, made up of DMH, DPH, and DHS, has made a public commitment to reduce the white gap in infant mortality by 30% over the next 5 years. So this is when we started in 2018. And so we were hoping to, our plan is to reduce it by 30% by 2023. By reducing the source of stress in women's life, helping block the pathway from social stress to physiological stress, and intervene early to reduce the impact of stress on health. And so this can be found on, the whole plan can be found on the Public Health Center for Health Equity website. But what we began to do in SPA 6 and 8, and as part of my work with whole person care, given the vision, I became the visionary for the first African American infant and maternal mortality community action team in LA County. And we first started off with SPA 6 and 8. And at the same time, there was talks and meetings to begin one in the Antelope Valley area. And so those, why we started there, because as I showed you in the beginning, those were the regions that was hardest hit. So we began to call together community members and leaders, as well as county departments, to look at coming together in a partnership to address this issue as a community, as those who've had the impact and experience. And so we had our first meeting October 23rd, 2018 at Kaiser Permanente in Baldwin Hills. Kaiser has been a great partner. And this was just a few pictures of some of the folks that were there. We had over 100 folks and participants in participation. We had clinicians, we had OBGYNs, heads of some of the medical departments. We had our public health leaders, Dr. Allen, Linda Aragon. We had our AIM countywide steering committee leaders for the AIM initiative, Dr. Franklin, Helen O'Connor, Black Infant Health Program, Yolanda Rogers-Jones. Several of our our Black Infant Health Program goes without saying. Many of our other Black-led programs like California Black Women's Health Project, Black Women for Wellness, Positive Results Corporation, LA Metropolitan Churches, Healthy African American Families. The list can go on, and I want everybody to charge it to my head and not my heart if they weren't named. But the community said, yes, we agree. We want to come together. We want to help create the strategies, interventions, and prevention methods and programs and services. And we want it to be done in a way in which Black-led organizations and leadership is uplifted. And for us to, be at the helm and support it in changing the narrative, because we realized that it had been going on so long, and our community, our nation has not changed it. So why not the ones that are impacted the most be the ones to say, this is how you can better serve us. This is how you can change what has happened. And this is how we can come together. And so we have a mission. It's by addressing the impact of racism or other root causes for health disparities, catalyzing community action, and promoting wellness and equitable healthcare strategies for African American Black families. This was just some of the flyers that we were putting out pre-COVID. We have a listserv right now of over 600 individuals that are supporting our work and involved in our work. We meet bi-monthly. Gonna really try to power through this. The first year, vision and mission created. We supported the perinatal health, perinatal equity initiative grant. AV CAT, as well as the South LA South Bay CAT, gave input and insight to the interventions that we thought should be created. We have 5 work groups out of the South LA, and I believe AV has a few work groups themselves. I know Interfaith, but South Bay, South LA, I'll show you where we are today. This is what we look like. We also were funded. And actually some of this have changed, but you can see Antelope Valley here. Like Brittany said, San Fernando Valley AIMCAT, which she's a member of. San Gabriel Valley, they began in October of this year. And then South LA, South Bay with the 5. And we need to add on because AV has a few, like I said, work groups themselves. But this is what we're doing. And this is how we're doing it. Back to SB 464, many of us participated in that to get that bill established in October of 2019, a year ago. Also, we participated, myself and 3 other colleagues, Raina Granberry, Diamond Lee, and Stella Klingman, in the Women's Policy Institute Fellowship, to where we created a policy that we presented to the Board of Supervisors, and it was authored by Supervisor Hilda Solis and co-authored by Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, to present a motion, a doula board motion for expansion, looking at how we could expand doula services, and for the Health Department, Public Health, to give interventions and potential strategies and who we could possibly work with, including healthcare providers or health networks like LA Care, like HealthNet, who could possibly look at funding doula services for women who are on Medi-Cal, so that all women can have a doula, because we've looked at what interventions doulas have provided. Supported and really have gained traction with meeting with some folks at the federal level on the Momnibus bill, supported the paid family leave, co-sponsoring the AB 2258 state doula bill. Please look out for that because the budget time is coming up in January. And there's so many things that we've done. I don't want to take up all the time. Black Daddy Dialogues is one of our support groups that meets. It was created by Black men for fathers who are men who are going to be fathers to Black children. So it does not mean they have to be Black, but they do have to be raising and birthing Black children. Also, we've had Black Maternal Health Week events the last 2 years. We supported and participated with a Black Breastfeeding Week. We meet bi-monthly, and the work groups meet every month. And there's just a plethora of work that is still going on. And why? Why are we doing this? If you look at these pictures here, most of these women were 3 of the women of the 4 pictured here, except the amazing Stacey Abrams. 3 of the 4 women pictured here were in their 20s. Who died. Catherine Terry, to my very far right, passed in about January of this year in AV, going in to deliver her son and did not come out alive. And her son is now motherless. LaShondra Hazard died on the East Coast, I believe in the Boston area. And her fetus died with her after going and complaining of pain. And she posted this, I'm in pain, I'm literally dying. By that evening, and she said, I'm not being heard. By that evening, they both had expired. To the bottom where it says under the sign Beverly Hills is the Mrs. Kira Johnson, the wife of Charles Johnson and the daughter of Judge Hatchett, who died at one of our hospitals at Cedars-Sinai here in LA County after not being listened to her husband for over, I believe, 8 hours, and was delivering their second child. And at the top was Miss Amber Isaac, who died earlier in the beginning of COVID. Similar experience. Bottom line, no acceptable rate for maternal mortality. So what can you do? Get involved. Join our listserv. Here's my email address. Celebrate, encourage, and advocate for the well-being of Black women. Don't know that you can see my shirt, but it basically says protect Black women. And I'm going to probably keep buying and supporting this young lady in having these shirts and really elevating the issue of Black women. Follow us on blackinfantsandfamilies.org. Attend one of our bi-monthly meetings, as mentioned, in one of our area regional AIMCATs. There are 4 around the county now. And we also Facebook, Black Infants and Families Los Angeles, Instagram, Black Infants and Families LA, and Twitter at BIF_LA. And so I want to thank you. Let's continue to partner together to save the lives of Black mamas and babies. We thank you for your continued partnership and just this opportunity. And how you can reach me, there are my numbers and my email address. And I thank you again. Madeline, we ready?
Hello.
I tried to push and power through
I
that.
know. I really appreciate it. You had a lot of great information and really important information to share, and I'm sorry that was really condensed. But this is just the first step in creating more awareness and talking about this. So we're going to see you guys again. I didn't see any questions in the chat that had popped up. There are a lot of resources that we posted. And then we'll continue to update our landing page to include a lot of the resources that were talked about today. But I definitely appreciate all of your stories, to such an important issue and problem that everyone needs to step in and support Black women. Do you have anything else to add before we sign off?
I would just say, definitely look into the Black Infant Health Program.
Mm-hmm.
We have their programs, and any Black woman can sign up for. There may be some time frames now. It has changed much since I was involved in the 90s, but I'm still partnering with the Black Infant Health Program. And the Children's Collective Inc. Long Beach has a Black Infant Health Program. Pasadena has a Black Infant Health Program. And so it would be great for women to get involved in those various programs. Just very key and essential to do that. We have partners like Claris Health. They offer group pregnancy classes. This is where you go along with people who are going to deliver at the same time as you, and you have that type of support. We also have folks that support with maternal mental health, folks that support with domestic violence. We have housing partners like Hoplets. We just have a plethora of services available that folks can get involved. And I'm just grateful even to Jessica and Brittany. Jessica said it best. I love the fact that even though her and her husband lost everything at the time, they didn't lose each other. And that's what's important in what we're doing, that we look out for our billboards around the city. Thank you to Dr. Franklin and Jade and that team who are doing media. First 5 LA is one of our huge, partners. And, if I did mention, like I said, it's just so much in my head.
Yeah.
They've been partners with us since the beginning to push out this work and make sure that we could continue to have even the free doula services. LA County, free doula services through the LA County doula program, community doula program. They can sign up. They can look on the Black Infants and Families page or email me, and I'll refer them to Michelle, Nikisha, Ariana, that team. It is free doula services for pregnant and parenting women by Black doulas in LA County. HealthNet has the Frontline Doula program. Some of the programs are at capacity, but they're looking at expanding and looking at more services. Look how you can support. We are a village, and we're looking to celebrate Black pregnancy. We're not talking about, if someone, you can't afford to have a baby. All that is not a relevant point to us. What's relevant is the health, wellness, and safety of Black moms and babies. So Madeline, I appreciate you. I thank you for taking this time.
Oh, sure. No, thank you guys. Thank you all. And I just want
up there in the back room.
Oh no, anyway, this has been a lot of information and resources for everyone to look back to. And like I said, we'll keep updating our maternal health resource page. A lot of the information here came up in the chat, so that will be accessible, but we'll aggregate it and put it in one place. Brittany, Jessica, and Adjoa, thank you so much for your work, for your contributions, for speaking up and speaking your truth. And we're here to support that conversation here at the library. I just want to highlight that we have a program next week at 11 a.m. Next week's program is the role of dads and partners. So for those of you watching, we have another program next week. And I guess we're done for today. So thank you so much. Let me just go to the comments really quickly to see if I saw any questions. No, I did not. Okay. All right. Thank you so much again. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.